After years of battling the ghosts of Vietnam in my dreams, the promise of a new experimental treatment for the lung damage I'd suffered brought me to the small town of Deming, New Mexico. It was a long shot, but when you've spent nights wheezing and days coughing up reminders of the past, you'll grab at any hope you can get. I wasn't alone in this fight. My old army buddy, John Little Bear, had the same scars, the same cough that rattled through his chest like gunfire. We'd survived the war, but we were still fighting battles within our bodies. We met up at the clinic on a chilly October morning, the kind that reminded you winter was lurking just around the corner. John hadn't changed much. His hair was a bit grayer, and the lines around his eyes had deepened, but his smile was as wide as ever when he saw me. "Michael, you old fox, still kicking, huh?" He greeted me with a robust handshake that spoke volumes of the years we'd shared. As we waited for our turn at the doctor's, we swapped stories of our lives after the war, but the conversation soon turned to the treatment. It was an experimental approach, one that the doctors hoped would repair some of the damage the chemicals had done to our lungs. Later that evening, to clear our heads from a day of medical jargon and tests, we found ourselves at a local bar. That's where we met Charles, a Navajo man who worked at a car dealership by day but seemed to know every story and myth of his people by night. He overheard us talking about our military days and the health battles we faced. "You ever hear about the skinwalkers?" he asked, sliding into the booth across from us. His question hung in the air, thick with intrigue. Charles told us about a ritual his people held deep in the desert, a secretive affair that promised more than just an insight into Navajo culture. It hinted at supernatural elements. "It's not something we usually share with outsiders, but I see a fire in you too," he said, his eyes scanning our faces for any sign of fear or disbelief. "A ritual that can transform a man, show you things about the world and about yourself that you've never imagined." Intrigued and admittedly a bit skeptical, John and I agreed to witness this ritual. What did we have to lose? We'd seen enough horrors in our time. A few shadows and chants in the desert night wouldn't shake us. Or so we thought. As we planned to head into the unknown, a part of me wondered if we were stepping into another kind of war, one that we were even less prepared for than the jungles of Vietnam. That night, as I lay in my motel room listening to the distant howls of the desert wind, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on the brink of something monumental. Whether it was hope, fear, or just the adrenaline of stepping into the unknown, I knew that this journey with John by my side was just beginning, and it was going to change everything. Charles drove, John sat beside him, and I was in the back seat, all of us wrapped in the heavy silence that had fallen since we left the bar. The desert stretched endlessly before us, the sun setting behind the mountains, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper secrets. The road was rough, less traveled, winding its way toward a part of the desert that felt untouched by time. As night fell, the first stars began to twinkle in the clear sky, a reminder of how vast the world was and how small our place in it. We arrived at the site of the ritual, a clearing far from any road, with a bonfire already crackling in its heart, casting eerie shadows on the faces of the Navajo men gathered around it. Some faces were marked with lines of age, others with the vigor of youth, but all shared a look of solemnity. As we approached, the men nodded silently at Charles, who introduced us as his friends, veterans who had seen things they could not explain in their wars. The men seemed to understand, their nods now carrying a weight of shared knowledge of hidden things. The ritual began with slow, haunting chants, the elders leading, and the younger men joining in a chorus that seemed to rise to the very heavens. The fire crackled and hissed, throwing sparks into the night as if it were trying to catch the stars. John and I stood side by side, the heat from the bonfire warming our faces, the chants warming something deeper inside. I felt a chill despite the fire, a primal fear of what might be lurking in the darkness beyond the firelight. Then, the transformation began. One of the men, his features obscured by the shadows and the flickering light, stepped forward. As the chanting reached a fever pitch, his body seemed to convulse, to warp and twist in ways that defied nature. It was as if the shadows themselves wrapped around him, molding him into a new form. A low growl rolled across the clearing, and where the man had stood, there now crouched a creature, half man, half beast, with eyes that glowed like coals in the fire. John gripped my arm, his nails digging in, and I knew he was seeing it too. not a trick of the light or a figment of our imaginations. The creature prowled around the fire, its movements both graceful and terrifying. I could hear whispers among the Navajo men, words of respect and fear, as they watched the skinwalker they had called forth. It was a sacred moment, one of power and danger, and I felt an intruder there, witnessing something meant only for the eyes of these men who lived between the ancient and the modern. As the creature disappeared into the darkness beyond the fire, the chants died down, and the men began to disperse. Charles came over to us, his face unreadable. "You've seen what few have," he said simply. John and I couldn't find the words to respond. What was there to say? We had come seeking answers, maybe even a solution to our tormented sleep, our haunted memories. But what we found was a deeper mystery, one that connected the living and the dead, the past and the present, in ways we were not prepared to understand. That night, as we drove back to the town, the desert seemed even quieter, the stars more distant. We had stepped into the heart of a mystery, touched something ancient and powerful, and I knew our lives would never be the same again. The drive back to Deming was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts, trying to make sense of what we had witnessed. The image of the skinwalker lingered in my mind, its eyes burning into me, as if it knew things about my soul that I dared not acknowledge. John was the first to speak, his voice low, tinged with a fear I'd never heard from him before, even in the worst days of the war. "Mike, what did we just see out there? Was it real, or are we losing it?" I didn't have an answer for him, and that scared me more than anything. We were soldiers. We were trained to trust our eyes, our senses. Yet, what we had seen challenged every rational explanation. My internal struggle grew as I grappled with my desire to rationalize the ritual versus the raw, undeniable fear that something unearthly had indeed occurred. It was a tension that knotted my stomach and clouded my thoughts. The following day brought more unease. We learned from a local news report that Charles had been found dead, his body discovered a few miles from the ritual site. The cause of death was unclear, and whispers of foul play circulated among the townspeople. The news hit like a gut punch. Had our participation in the ritual led to his death? Was this some kind of retribution for our intrusion into a sacred practice? John and I decided to seek some semblance of understanding, or perhaps validation of our experience. We contacted Gary and Wendy Swanson, paranormal researchers known for their work with Native American myths and the supernatural. They met us at a small diner on the edge of town, their curiosity piqued by our story. As we recounted the events, the researchers listened intently, occasionally exchanging glances that seemed both skeptical and intrigued. Gary, a tall man with a keen eye, nodded slowly. "Skinwalkers are a deeply ingrained part of Navajo culture," he explained. "They're considered very powerful and very dangerous. What you witnessed, if true, is extraordinary." Wendy, more reserved, her notes scattered before her, added, "But it's also steeped in controversy and skepticism. Many refuse to speak of it, and others deny the ritual's existence altogether." Their words offered no comfort. If anything, they deepened the mystery, framing our experience as something beyond the ordinary, beyond the explainable. We left the meeting with more questions than answers, the weight of the unknown pressing down on us. That night, as I lay in my motel room, the silence wasn't silent at all. It was filled with the echoes of chants, the crackling of the fire, and the haunting memory of a man turning into something else. Sleep proved elusive as I wrestled with my thoughts, my fears, and the creeping realization that some doors, once opened, might never be closed again. The days following our meeting with the Swansons were filled with restless nights and uneasy days. Both John and I were grappling with the impossibility of our experience. My mind kept returning to the firelit faces of the Navajo men, the unsettling transformation, and the tragic news of Charles's untimely death. The reality of what might have been supernatural had woven itself into the fabric of our lives, leaving us forever altered. As we sat in the diner once more, nursing cups of coffee that had long since gone cold, John broke the silence. "Mike, I've been thinking," he started, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Maybe some stories aren't ours to tell. Maybe some truths aren't ours to uncover." His words struck a chord with me. We had stepped into a world that was not ours, driven by our own needs and curiosities, never fully considering the weight of what we were asking to witness. We decided then and there to end our pursuit of understanding the skinwalker and the ritual. It was a decision born out of respect for the Navajo culture, for the unknown, and for our own mental peace. We agreed to keep our experience between us, a pact made under the weight of something much larger than ourselves. We couldn't explain or understand what had happened, and perhaps we weren't meant to. That choice, however difficult, brought with it a kind of solace. The decision to let go, to accept that some things were beyond our comprehension, eased the tension that had built up like a storm inside me. I found myself able to breathe a little easier, to look at the desert not with fear, but with a newfound respect for its mysteries and its keepers. As I prepared to leave Deming, I reflected on everything that had happened. The ritual, the transformation, Charles's death, they had all converged into a pivotal moment in my life. It was a chapter one would carry with me always, a story of curiosity, fear, and ultimately respect for the boundaries between the known and the unknown. Driving out of town, I took one last look at the desert. It was beautiful and serene in the harsh light of day, a stark contrast to the dark, mysterious place it had been on the night of the ritual. I realized then that some mysteries were meant to stay hidden, shrouded in the shadows of tradition and fear. And as the town faded in my rearview mirror, I felt a closure and a quietude that I hadn't felt in a long time. In the end, the desert had given us more than we could have asked for. It had given us a glimpse into a world that was not ours, a lesson in humility and the limits of human understanding. And for that, I was grateful. As John and I drove on, heading back to our lives, we carried with us the echo of the desert's ancient whispers, a reminder of the night when the world had shifted beneath our feet.